Today we welcome Yale University Director of Basketball Operations, Matt Elkin. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, Blake.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I kind of just start off by having you kind of tell our audience what a Dobo is and what it does at the D1 level?
Yeah, for sure. So Dobo is a kind of short way of saying Director of Basketball Operations. Um, Majority of Division One teams have one on the men's and the women's side. Some staffs are much larger. Here at Yale, we really just have our head coach, our three assistant coaches, and myself on our staff. So essentially, what I do is I try to handle everything that goes on within our program outside of what specifically happens on the court. So I'm not especially involved in kind of our game planning, our scouting, recruiting. Certainly, I have a role in all of those areas, but those are not my primary focuses. So I try to make sure that everything is running smoothly for our program off the court. So could be planning travel, could be running summer camps, could be connecting with alumni or communicating with other people in our department, practice scheduling, game scheduling, variety of different things, but everything that allows our coaching staff, our head coach and our assistant coaches, as well as our players to focus on what they got to do to help us win games.
What does a game day look for you versus a non-game day?
Yeah, I mean it's in season. A game day is very much routine, right? We'll wake up, we'll have our pregame meal, we'll go do a shoot around or a walkthrough at the hotel, depending on the time of the game. And then for me personally, it's actually a lot of downtime. I try to. I'm the type of person that likes to prepare a lot of things in advance. So when it comes time for the actual day of the game, I'm open so that if things come up last minute, I'm available. But with that being said, for the most part, it's just making sure that our pregame meal is ready, our breakfast, depending on what time the game is, making sure everything's good with our shoot around time. And then we're getting to the arena usually about 2 hours before tip off. At some point at the hotel, we'll have a film session, review the scout, things like that. And then game time goes. And then after the game, it's making sure the post game meal is there, making sure the bus is ready to take us back home or wherever our next game is going to be from there. So again, just kind of making sure the logistics are all running smoothly, making sure our guys have what they need, making sure our coaches have what they need, and then kind of just allowing them to do what they do. So that's a game day for me. And then on a non-game day, kind of depends if it's a day we have practice, if we're off, but I'm usually in the office first thing in the morning, getting some emails in, maybe getting an update on the scores from the night before, from throughout college basketball, reading some news, whatever it may be. We usually have a staff meeting every morning with our entire coaching staff, and then just getting ready for practice that day. Or if it's an off day, coaches might go recruiting. So just kind of being around, and then throughout the course of the day, just random things occur. People in our athletic department could be something related to gear or planning for an upcoming game, or the women's team has a question about scheduling the gym time or whatever it may be. So that just kind of being available to answer questions and again be that kind of connector between our program and everything going on around at Yale and just in general.
So you mentioned already that your main duties are off the court, right? And you're not touching, like the scouting or anything the coaches are actually doing. But in what you said, you can tell how important it is sort of as your position is as it pertains to the success of the program and of what the coaches and the players are doing. And you've been with Yale since 2020, but this year, compared to the other years, I would imagine has been a little bit of a different experience because the NCAA approved having some more coaches on the court. So how has that kind of changed the way that your day-to-day is during the season, if at all?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, we have a pretty small staff. It's just our assistant coaches, our head coach, and myself. So the changes to the rules of coaches being able to get on the floor and things like that doesn't really impact us here at Yale, and traditionally throughout the Ivy League as well, we tend to have smaller staffs. So there's been a waiver that's been going on since COVID, pretty much when a lot of student managers weren't able to be around their programs that allowed certain support staff to be on the floor, and that kind of carried off into allowing more assistant coaches to be on the floor. So that kind of waiver temporary thing is still in place. So I'm able to be on the floor, help out our coaches as much as needed. And that's kind of what I want to do. Coaching is my passion. It's my goal. What I want to do. So getting those reps is really helpful for me. And especially having been here for a few years, our coaches know that I'm very committed to doing my job as director of ops. And so once I've done that to the best of my ability, our head coach has given me a great opportunity to be able to help him out, help our assistants out to do more things on the floor. However, the rule changes primarily still don't impact us as much, just because there's still a lot that needs to get done around here. And I'm still at every practice. I'm still able to help out, but it hasn't shifted my primary focus away from doing all the things that help our team be successful. And I think that's kind of one of the important things for any director of operations or any support staff, is to make sure that you're super focused on doing your job first before you start trying to add other things, because then you end up missing out on what your main responsibilities are, because you're so focused on working out with a player, or being involved in a scouting report, or recruiting conversations or whatever, and you forget about planning the travel or doing the things that are required for your actual job. So I try to make sure I'm always super focused on finishing the tasks that I need to do for my job, and then when opportunities come up, I want to make sure the players know and the coaches know that I'm available to support them on the court as well.
Given what you just said, that obviously your focus during the season, off season, game day, non-game day, is obviously your Dobo responsibilities. One thing that I can imagine, no matter what side you're on of working at the D1 level, is the emergence of the transfer portal in the last couple of years. So I am curious, with that in mind, that obviously you have your main responsibilities, but how has that impacted your job, particularly in the off season over the last couple of years?
Yeah, so the Ivy League is very unique in a lot of ways, and I'm sure I've already touched on some. We'll continue to touch on them, but one of the main ways that the Ivy League is unique certainly has to do with the academic requirements for getting into school. None of our student athletes receive athletic scholarships. It's all need-based financial aid, so they're all applying to Yale, getting accepted to Yale on their own, and then deciding how does it work financially for them to be able to come to Yale. Some of our student athletes get full financial aid, and so they essentially are getting a scholarship. Some of them are paying something in between, and some of them are paying the full tuition as another student may. And so with that being said, not only are there a lot of financial factors that come in, and we don't abide by the same 13 scholarships that other Division I schools have. Now, with that being said, there's also academic requirements and admissions guidelines and deadlines and things like that. So as far as transfers go, it's very difficult for us to bring a transfer in, because they have to meet those academic requirements. They have to get in by a certain deadline. And for the most part in college basketball nowadays, it's after the season. It could be March, April, May, when a guy decides, hey, I'm not happy here for whatever reason, and I want to explore. And at that point, it's too late for us. We've already built our roster, and we can't get anybody into school. This year, for the first time ever, we have a transfer coming in, or who came in this year to play for us, who was at Northwestern. He was a player who grew up in Boston. We had recruited out of high school. So we were already very familiar with him and his family. So when he decided to transfer, he knew he wanted to come to Yale. He didn't do the transfer portal. He didn't go through that whole show, and just said, hey, I want to come to Yale, and ended up having to sit out a full year to prepare, and also give him that time to be able to go through the application process. So that is not ideal, right? You don't want to have to sit out for a year when you transfer in. So that makes it difficult for us in our level, but other schools in our league have gotten players, whether it's Division II or III guys transferring in, even junior college guys coming in, and also some transfers from other Division I schools. Now, as far as transfers out go, because you're at a place like Yale or an Ivy League school, people are making those decisions with those financial things in mind, and also they're making big picture decisions about why choose Yale over any other school. And traditionally, that has to do with your prospects for the future, right? So whether it's a career in business or law or medicine or politics or whatever, or you want to be a professional athlete, whatever that may be, you're coming to Yale for a certain reason that's more than just for the next 4 years, but more so the next 40 years. And so some of the traditional things that might occur for other student athletes at other schools are not the same things that occur here. And so those players are not as quick to want to leave the opportunity to graduate from Yale and build their network with this community just because of basketball. So we don't have a lot of guys really leaving. And I think in Coach Jones's 25 years here as head coach, I don't think we've had a single player transfer out with eligibility left to play. Now, the one little caveat that I would add to that is graduate transfers. In the Ivy League, you're not allowed to play a fifth year. You're not allowed to be a graduate student. COVID is into this kind of bubble in this conversation, but certainly if you were somebody that got injured and had to redshirt for a year, or COVID, for example, if you were playing and we didn't have our season, or if you just have an extra year of eligibility for whatever reason, once you graduated from any Ivy League school, you can't stay for your fifth year, and we can't bring in grad transfers. So some of the best players across college basketball at a lot of different levels are Ivy League grad transfers. So guys are leaving because they've exhausted their eligibility here, but they can still play college basketball. So the transfer portal is probably a lot more relevant for those surrounding the Ivy League, looking at our guys that are graduating with eligibility still left, a lot more than it is for us kind of looking through the portal, trying to find the next guy that's going to come in and be able to help us right away.
Got it. Thanks for explaining. I think that it's just super interesting and kind of just like that's the first thing I know as a basketball guy that I would wonder about somebody that's involved in an Ivy League is obviously how it differs, because as you said, you're going to an Ivy League for a lot more than just what you're doing on the floor or the field, of course, because as you said, it's setting you up for the next 40 years to be able to go to an institution like that. So appreciate the info there. We've talked a lot about what you're doing now and what goes into your job and sort of what goes into everything you do at Yale. But I kind of want to go back now to the beginning for you and get more into your personal journey. Take us back to the beginning. How did you get into basketball, and just take us along your journey up to where you are now?
Yeah, for sure. So grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, played high school basketball, went to Boston Latin, which is the oldest public school in the country, 1635. Very traditional, not a basketball powerhouse by any means, but was an incredible school. And so after I finished playing basketball in high school, I thought maybe I could have an opportunity if I wanted to keep playing at a small level, Division III or something. But really, I knew my dad and my brother both were alumni of the University of Wisconsin, and I had a love for that school. I had visited my older brother there, and that was kind of my top choice. So once I got accepted there, I said I want to go to this big time school with big sports, being a different part of the country, different part of being able to meet people from different parts of the country and the world. And get involved but stay involved in basketball. And so that's when I started looking into the student manager route. So actually applied my first year at Wisconsin to be a student manager. There was probably 70 or 80 people that came. We actually had a tryout. It was like a big deal. Like I take a written test, do stuff on the court. It was amazing. And I actually didn't get hired my first year. I continued on, and was still really passionate about it, kept in touch with everybody. Fast forward to my sophomore year, did the same process again, and ended up getting hired. So I spent my sophomore year as a student manager for the Wisconsin men's basketball team. And then the next following year, my junior year at Wisconsin, there was an opportunity, an opening at Edgewood College, which is a Division III school, which is also right in Madison, about 5-10 minutes outside of UW campus. And they had a new head coach. It was certainly a different atmosphere and environment from being part of this, big time Division I program to then being on a small Division III school where I was able to be more of a student assistant coach. I was involved in recruiting and film exchange and at every practice and traveling with the team everywhere. So I was really involved and I really enjoyed that. So while I was in school, I was also working at Edgewood. So by the time I was finished college, I had experience working in Division I, big time, small Division III. And then after college, I knew I wanted to continue my education and get my master's degree. And I was very fortunate that I had an opportunity to come back home to Boston to Northeastern University. I got my master's degree there while I worked with the men's basketball team for 2 seasons under Coach Bill Cohen. Got an opportunity to win CAA championship my first year, go to an NCAA tournament my first year there. And then I finished my master's degree after 2 years with a master's in sports leadership. And so that was kind of my first experience in the business. And then from there, as many of us know, like, okay, you graduate college or you finish your master's, what's next? Like, there's no school that's tying me. I got to actually start looking for a real job. And so I was very lucky to have an opportunity to spend the next 2 years at a prep school called Vermont Academy. It's in the New England Prep School Conference with some of the best teams in the country, some of the best players, a ton of NBA prospects, some great coaches. I had a really great opportunity to coach 15 Division I players there, 2 players that had playing time in the NBA, and countless of them that are currently still overseas playing. And then I got to spend the next 2 years in Los Angeles at the Windward School. I was working there, was head coach for our 8th grade team and assistant coach for our varsity team. Again, very, very lucky and fortunate to have worked with some incredible players there. Won CIF Southern Section championship in my time there, coached a couple 5-star recruits that were freshmen and sophomore at the time, now are at UCLA and USC, as well as other guys that have gone on to schools like UC Irvine, Colorado College, and a variety of other places. So spent that 4-year time period on the East and the West Coast coaching high school basketball, and was also involved with grassroots. Was working with Under Armour on the Under Armour circuit, making some really good connections there. And when I was on the West Coast, I was working with West Coast Elite, which is one of the Under Armour programs that's based in Southern California. So between those 4 years, I got to build my network in an incredible way. Got to get on-court coaching experience, and then taking all the things that I had learned from my time at Wisconsin, at Edgewood, and at Northeastern to infuse into these high school programs to make them as professional as possible, and also help our players get recruited to play at that level. Then 2020 comes, COVID is kind of starting up, not sure what the future is going to hold, and found an opportunity to come back closer to home here at Yale. Was very lucky to get to work for Coach Jones, to have an opportunity to be in this position. And this is now my 4th year here, my 3rd season, because my first year was the season was canceled due to COVID, but my 3rd year currently here at Yale, and my first 2 years had an opportunity each of those 2 years to win a regular season and an Ivy League championship in the tournament. So been very, very fortunate.
Very cool. And obviously sounds like you've worked with a ton of different coaches at all different levels. One guy I do want to key on here is Coach Gard, if you don't mind, and just kind of talk about how that experience has helped you along, and what are some of the things you learned from him when you were there that are helping you right now in what you do at Yale.
Yeah, for sure. So my time at Wisconsin was actually when Coach Bo Ryan was the head coach there. Coach Gard was an assistant coach. Lamont Paris, who's now at South Carolina, was an assistant coach. Gary Close was an assistant coach, and a lot of the support staff, people that were around the program. If you look at the Wisconsin program now, it's a lot of former players that are part of the coaching staff and just staffers that have been around for a while. So Mark, who's the current director of ops, was there as a manager when I was there. AJ, who's in their video operations, was there as well. Sharif Chambliss, who's an assistant coach, former player, is now back as was there when I was there. So it's a lot of the same family and the same faces. But just getting to be around a program like that, that is so successful every day in and day out, a program that, even growing up in Boston, where there's so many colleges, is very much a pro sports town. I was always a fan of Wisconsin, and to get to see it from the outside perspective, then to get to be inside and see what it takes to operate a program at that high level, it was really amazing. And, just to see the way that Coach Ryan or Coach Gard or Paris or whomever interacted with the players, whether that was with the whole team, one-on-one, who was coming in to watch film, who was, having meetings with them, how are they interacting with those players, just developing the work ethic, even like the language, just how they speak. What are some of the things that they look for? What are some things that they notice that they want to critique or tweak in certain players? How do they do that? How do they, again, Coach Ryan was a phenomenal coach and one of the best to ever do it across the game of college basketball. And he had a certain style that was a little bit different than Coach Gard, but they learned from each other, and hence why Coach Gard has had some great success taking over. So just always trying to be a sponge and learn as much as I could from everybody on staff. I think it's really good because, again, you never know. At the time, I didn't know that Coach Gard was going to be the head coach for the Badgers, but you sit in that office and you listen to those coaches talk all the time, and you can tell, I think this guy is going to be a head coach very soon. It might not be tomorrow, might not be next year, but soon. And I could always tell with Coach Gard that that was his kind of trajectory.
Super interesting stuff there. And we kind of talked about the coaching side. Now I kind of want to go on the player side. And you mentioned all the stops that you've been at. You've worked with high level talent in New England and Southern California, all over the place. Obviously now at Yale, um, guys like Jordan Nwora and other people like that. How have the players that you've worked with, sort of, prepared you for what you're doing now at Yale to be able to help guys in whatever way that you can in your job now? And what are some of those things that you've seen along the way in those high level players that end up making it to the professional level, whether it be overseas or the G League or the NBA?
Yeah, like you said, Blake, I mean, my I guess resume or whatever you want to say, the players that I've had the opportunity and the privilege to work with is something that I don't take for granted, and I'm very honored to have done that even in early in my career. You mentioned Jordan Nwora, who's had an incredible NBA career, won a championship with the Milwaukee Bucks. He came in to Vermont Academy. He did 1 year as a post grad, and coming out of his high school in Buffalo, he already had a ton of Division I offers, but he wasn't at the level that he wanted to be at. And he knew that he could come in here or to Vermont and be able to work on his game, continue to do what he needs to do in the classroom, get bigger, stronger, faster, to be a better college player. And then, of course, we try to help lay the foundation, the groundwork, so that when they get to college, now they have the tools that now the college coaches can take from there. And same thing when they go on to the pros. But that to name one. But Simi Shittu was an incredible player that we had as well when I was at Vermont Academy, who was, I think at the time, was maybe top 10 in the country or something, and had an incredible list of schools. So everything from that to the high level Division III players and everything in between. I mean, just the opportunity to get reps as a coach, right? To understand, okay, I'm going to work with this player one-on-one. Here are some drills that we can do together. Here are some things that he really likes and kind of gets his competitive fire going. And here are some things that he's just kind of going through the motion. All right, certain people like to work out in the morning. Some people are good around lunchtime. Some people like late night in the lab just by themselves, right? So trying to understand how certain players react to coaching. Certain guys you can yell at, certain guys you got to put your arm around their shoulder. Certain guys have their aunt or uncle or their trainer that needs to get touched all the time. Some people, they're responsible and you can just go right to them and tell them what it is and be real with them. So I think just getting reps and experience with all different types of people, because every person, every young player, whether they're an NBA prospect or somebody that's just playing because they love the game and then they're going to be done with it, you got to be able to coach and interact with all those people, because they all are part of your team and they all got to be going in the same direction to help you guys achieve your ultimate goal. I think that one of the main things that has helped me personally in my career, in addition to just getting those reps and experience of working with players, learning how to coach different players, was the network that it helped me to build. When I'm at Vermont Academy, throughout the course of a fall of open gyms, we had probably 100 plus college coaches, everything from John Calipari, Roy Williams, Rick Pitino, down to, Division III assistant coaches coming to our gym and watching. And that's an opportunity for them to see our players, but it's also an opportunity for me to introduce myself, show them what I'm capable of doing on the floor with our players, network with them, follow up, be a resource, give them information that they need, right? So I was giving value to those people, and a lot of those people that I met, almost 10 years ago now, maybe, are people that are head coaches, associate head coaches, gone on to a variety of different places. And so I think one of the cool things that I learned was, like, when I was in Vermont, I met a couple people that then when I was in LA, I saw them again and they were like, wait, you were just in Vermont, now you're in LA, but like you still have players, like this is incredible. And you keep those connections going. And so that was a huge help for me in my career, I would say. And then, kind of to your question about like what are some of the characteristics or qualities? I mean, certainly there's the physical piece, right? I mean, when we had Jordan was one of the best shooters I've ever been around at a 6'7", 6'8" frame. I mean, nobody could contest it. Or Simi, Simi was 6'9", 6'10", and he had guard skills and he could grab a rebound and push it coast to coast and dunk on somebody. Like, unfortunately, that's not how my body was built, so I don't have that skill set, right? But so there's certain physical things that you obviously see, but certainly the work ethic and the drive that somebody has to be able to get in the gym on their own, work on something, receive feedback on how to become better at something, and to be able to take that and to implement it into a game situation or into a big time stage, whether that's an AAU game or a high school game or a, a USA basketball trial, whatever it is, where eyes are on you, to be able to step up in that opportunity and in that moment to execute the things you've been working on. So those are some things that I've noticed from some of those high level players, that they get in those moments and they shine. And I think that's a big reason why people get those opportunities that they've been working for.
Putting your advice cap on now, because you've talked a lot about the things that you've learned from being around, like you said, just getting to interact with coaches of you know everybody who's who's in the Hall of Fame or going to be in the Hall of Fame, or and then working with players and stuff like that. Um, you've been, obviously, like, everybody has their own journey with whatever they're doing in life, but particularly with basketball, I feel like, it's, you get a diverse sort of skill set with people where they either maybe stay in the same area or they go to college somewhere, then they go back. Then there are people like yourself, and I relate to this too, who bounce all over the place. And as you said, like, you have your advantages that you get from that. So my first question, in terms of you giving advice to people who maybe want to get to where you are in what you do, is, what's something that you've learned along the way at all these different stops that you wish that you knew when you were starting?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I would tell our players all the time that you don't know what you don't know, right? And so, like, experience is the best teacher, because you have to go through something before you know how you can react to it, how you can respond. And so, I think that that's something that I learned about myself, like, even from an early age. When I left Boston, all my comfort zone, family, friends, most of the people I knew stayed there, and I went to Madison, Wisconsin, where there was nobody that I knew from high school growing up, didn't have any friends or anything, just kind of put myself down here in an area that I thought I felt comfortable in, and just make it work. And I think that's a huge advantage that I have personally. And I don't think everybody can do that. I don't think everybody's built that way or comfortable to do that. But sometimes you got to be a little uncomfortable too. Like, sometimes you got to leave a situation where you're at a place like a Vermont Academy and you're coaching NBA level players, and you're, in this incredible basketball network, to go to the other side of the country and just plop yourself down and make a new network, right? And so, like, I'm the type of person that learned as time has gone on that I'm adaptable, that I can move to different parts of the country, that I can put myself in different networks, because one of the things that I think I'm really good at is being able to connect with people on a variety of levels, partly because of who I am, but also because of the environment that I grew up in, and the things that I value. I think it allows me to connect to a variety of different people in a variety of ways. So, that's something that I learned, and it's one piece of advice that I always give for young coaches, is, like, if you have the ability to, like, financially, if you can make it work, if you don't have anything that's keeping you back, family, physical things, like, there's no limitations on your career, then don't put limitations on your career. Let yourself go to a prep school. Let yourself go to another part of the country. Let yourself get fired because of nothing that you did wrong, but just because you connected to the wrong program at the wrong time, right? Let these things happen so you can experience them, so that you can become better and you can learn what type of person you are, what type of coach you are. So it's been the best thing that's ever happened to me, was being able to move to different parts of the country, so that now I have a strong network on the East Coast, strong network in the Midwest, strong network on the West Coast. And hopefully all those relationships and the time that I've invested in those relationships will allow me to be really successful wherever I end up in the long term.
Speaking of kind of building that network, I know that you are really involved with the Jewish Coaches Association, and I want to use that as an example, just for you to talk about how important you think it is to grow that network, and sort of, what would your advice be for somebody that's starting out, that's like, okay, how do I grow my network in an organic way? Of course, there's LinkedIn cold messaging people and emailing people, but what are some like real examples that you can use from your experience? And again, knowing that what you do with that organization is a great example of that.
No, I appreciate it, Blake. Like the Jewish Coaches Association is really important to me. It's something that I've been very passionate about for a while and been lucky to be involved in, and I've seen it through my personal development, but also through being able to help other people through a network such as that. That it's really just been life changing for so many people, getting them jobs, getting them to connect with other people. So, using that again as an example, the first event that I ever went to when I went to the Final Four NABC convention was a Jewish coaches breakfast. And it was at the convention. This was in Atlanta, 2013 or 14, about 10 years ago or so. And I got invited to this breakfast, which is how most people end up. They get invited by somebody else and because they've never heard of it and they show up. And I'm sitting at a table with Keith Dambrot, who was at the time the head coach at Akron, who's now at Duquesne. He had coached LeBron James in high school, and he was coming off a great season. He was winning the Red Auerbach Coach of the Year award, which is an annual award that we give out through the JCA to the men's or women's Coach of the Year. So I'm a student manager. I'm a sophomore or junior in college, sitting at a table having coffee, eggs, bagels with a coach that's about to win the Red Auerbach Coach of the Year. This is a person who grew up in Boston who obviously knows Red Auerbach, not personally, but of course knows who that is. And to be able to sit at a table with a head coach and just chop it up as if we're peers, to me, that was like, I'm coming to this event every year for the rest of my life. And that type of environment, that type of feeling is what's so great about networking and being able to be in an environment where a young aspiring person can connect with the head coach that they might never have gotten a chance to meet. Same thing when I was at the prep schools. I would get to interact with these head coaches and assistant coaches that wouldn't necessarily have any reason to meet with me if I just sent them an email or cold call or whatever. But now I'm here. I can show them what I'm about and I can get to really build that relationship. So it's super important for young coaches and all coaches across the board to develop your network and to find areas and resources that can kind of shrink that network for you. So Jewish Coaches Association, you walk into that room and everybody in here is Jewish or has Jewish values or care to be in an environment with Jewish values. And that's just going to help you connect. Whether it's Black coaches, Asian coaches, Hispanic coaches, whether you're at the high school coaches clinic or a college coaches clinic, they have a director of operations meeting at the Final Four, go to that and meet other director of ops. So just finding other ways to connect with people. And I think that's super important. So like the Final Four has been a huge way for me to build my network. All the places that I've lived and worked has been really big. And then again, just like putting myself out there to go into a random gym where I don't know anybody, but maybe have an opportunity to meet some new coaches has helped me. And I think the ability to not just make your network, but grow and develop and continue to build is really important, because for a lot of young coaches, they want to meet, the head coach at Duke or Kansas or Kentucky. Oh, they get their phone number somehow. And now it's like, that's my connection. But if they don't know you, then it doesn't matter. That like, it's not about who you know. It's about who knows you and what can they do for you. Right. And so my approach has always been like, when I was at prep school, I would send out thank you notes. Hey, thank you for coming to check out so-and-so. If you ever need anything, let me know. Now that was twofold. That was to show love and appreciation. Thank you for coming out here. But it was also like, hey, by the way, if you need anything, I'm your guy. Let me know. Right. So now I'm building these connections and I'm offering something without needing anything in return. Oh, you want our game schedule? Boom, I'll text it to you tonight. Oh, you want to know what other schools are coming in to recruit Jordan Nwora? I got you. I'll let you know. So-and-so was here yesterday, whatever. Right. So just adding value to people without asking for anything in return is really meaningful. And I think that's a great way to kind of break down the barriers where people that aren't sure, what your intentions are, just offer yourself up, be available, be present, and be helpful. And then eventually it'll come back to you.
What would you say it takes to move up in the basketball business?
A lot of luck. You got to be really lucky. Yeah, it's you have to work extremely hard. Everybody knows that. You have to be lucky. I think everybody knows that. Time and place is really important. I tell people all the time, when I was in high school, I had a couple opportunities to interview at a couple different Division I jobs for video operations jobs, and got flown out, taken care of, went through the whole interview process, was super prepared, felt really good, came back, got the call that they were going in another direction. And I was like, man, I'm never going to make it in Division I. I'm never going to make it in college. I don't know, how do people do this? And at the time I thought it was a dead end, right? And lo and behold, each of those places that I got denied from, a year later, those coaches were all let go, right? And so rewind, if I had accepted that position, if I had been offered, and I go to this school, and now a year later I do the best job I possibly can, and we still get fired, or the coach does so good that they leave and don't take me with, now I'm out of a job, and who knows where I would be. So I was very, very lucky to be able to work at a place like Northeastern, where I won a CAA championship, to be at Vermont Academy, where they had just won an NEPSAC to get to coach NBA players, to be at Windward, win a CIF championship, to be here at Yale, to win championships, to be around great players, to be around great coaches. So, it's timing, it's luck, it's hard work, it's all those things put together. And just making the most of your opportunity, really, and keeping your head down, grinding, doing what we're all talking about here, building your network, building your support system, people that you can rely on, having mentors, having peers, people that can have your back, and also you can do the same for them when they need it and when you need it, and then being able to just trust that good things are going to happen when it's time. And unfortunately, the business is pretty brutal, goes through a lot of ups and downs along the way, and so just staying the course, trying to be really positive, really present, at all times is what's worked for me, and hopefully can work for other people too.
Matt, you've been super gracious with your time, and we really appreciate it. The last thing I'll ask you, that we ask all of our guests last on the show, is what is your why behind what you do in basketball?
Yeah, thanks for asking. That's, a great question. And I've heard a lot of coaches talk about their why, and, what's gotten them into the business. And, I'm fascinated by, as things continue to change in our industry, it seems like a lot of people's whys are either not being met, or maybe evolving and changing, and people are pivoting out of the business for one reason or another, right? So what I'm trying to think of is my why, for why I got into this in the first place, and why I continue to do what I do, is I just truly love the impact that I can have on someone else's life, not just our student athletes, but our coaches, the other people around campus, the recruits, the people here in our New Haven community in general, right? Like, I just love the access and the ability that I have to have an impact on somebody's life, right? We run basketball camps every summer, and we have these little kids, elementary, middle school, that look up to our players. They think they're Superman. They think they're going to the NBA because they can dunk or hit a three-pointer, right? And I remember being that kid, looking up to a counselor who was a Division III basketball player who never got off the bench, but because they could dunk, I thought they were, the next LeBron James, right? So I remember being that little kid, and I remember the impact that had for me. And so I've always wanted to give that back to other people. I've grew up in Boston, and went to public school, and I saw, unfortunately, many of my friends and peers that didn't have the same opportunities I was afforded, and their lives took them in one direction. And so I always thought it could be my responsibility to help bring those people back and keep them on the right path, right? So, and now I've gotten into this world of the high academic, world with Ivy Leagues and prep schools and boarding schools and things like that, where, trying to help families, players navigate, how do I get the most out of my future, right? Whether that's as an athlete or as an adult, what am I going to do, right, in my life? And as I figure it out, I try to help other people figure it out too, and we work together, and they give me advice, I give them advice, right? So it's very much a fluid and flexible thing. But a lot of who I am, Blake, is based on how I was raised. My parents, my mom is a therapist and a social worker, and my dad works in human resources, and so they've based their lives on helping other people, right? And I grew up in that environment. And so I fell in love with the game of basketball at an early age. And I've been very lucky that I've found a way to combine those two things, my love for the game of basketball and my love for helping people, into one. And so as long as I can be in an environment, in a situation where I'm able to have that impact, um, I feel like I could do this for the rest of my life. And I love coaching. I love being around the players, the coaches, the program. So my why is based on being able to do that. And I'm very lucky that I get to do that every day.
Matt Elkin, Yale University Director of Basketball Operations. Matt, thank you so much for joining Hoops U, man.
Thanks. Appreciate you guys for having me on very much. It was awesome to be here, and look forward to following along for the future.
Amazing. Well, that's Matt for you guys. Check out the show. It's going to be on our YouTube channel at UNIV Hoops and on all social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, under the same handle. That's at Univ Hoops. We have new episodes coming for you every week with people like Matt at the Division I level, people at the G League level, at the NBA level. So stay tuned for weekly shows. We're taking you behind the scenes of your favorite basketball team every single week. We will see you next time. Thanks.